Listen to part of a discussion in an astronomy class. The professor is discussing stars. Constellations.
Today I want to talk to you about constellations, what they are and what their history is. I think you all know that they are patterns of stars, but I also want you to understand that constellations are also areas of the sky and everything which is located within that area. Those boundaries were established in the 1920s by a committee of astronomers. Star charts will show constellations, and depending upon the time the chart was made, constellations will be shown differently.
What do you mean by that?
Well, charts made before 1928, when the boundaries were established, show the star patterns in different ways. Some of the really old charts portray the patterns as fancy ladies in elegant clothes, or animals which may be parts of two animals, such as half a fish and half a goat. Later, charts during the Renaissance time were very decorative and had beautiful drawings in the margins of the charts.
What are the charts like today?
Well, the charts usually just show lines connecting stars, kind of like a connect-the-dot game kids play. Most constellations are shown as simple patterns. They may be shown as crosses, squares, angles, and even bent lines. Not all charts show the patterns in the same way, and a few constellations actually look like what they are named after. For example, Orion and Scorpius do, but most patterns show no resemblance to the constellation's name.
Well, I don't think that was a particularly good reason for the way constellations were drawn.
Sure it is. If we do things today, they will be analyzed differently in 20 years.
Many constellations were probably named for symbolic reasons. For example, Ursa Major is also referred to as the Great Bear because it is similar to a hibernating bear's behavior. Here the position or location of the stars was more important than their appearance. Other examples can be given, but much of this information has been lost over the years because reasons were not written down. It might really be an interesting theme or topic for a term paper though. Think about it this way. Stars change location in the sky as the seasons change. And because there are 4 seasons, it will take a year for you to see what I mean. If you follow the location of Ursa Major throughout the year, you understand why it was named as a symbolic meaning for the bear's hibernation. Remember that all the constellations were invented. They were thought up by people.
But I thought you said they are star patterns in the sky.
They are, but they are imaginary. Some were thought up and named in modern times, but most were invented hundreds, if not thousands, of years ago. Some were invented in prehistoric times. That is why it is so difficult to be able to give historic or even accurate facts about the history of constellations.
Well then, what is the importance of knowing or being able to identify constellations?
Because if you are able to identify patterns of stars and know the locations of many of the more than 80 constellations, then you can understand more about the sky and how it changes and what the significance of the changing sky has to star location. And because of the importance, let me explain to you a little about the history of constellations. I gave you the example earlier of the Great Bear. People think this may be the oldest constellation. People throughout the Northern Hemisphere see the Great Bear near the North Pole. It is thought that as early as Ice Age times, people thought the stars' movements looked like a bear hibernating. The stars would disappear in the fall, when bears begin to go into hibernation, and then the stars would reappear in the spring, after hibernation was over. And as these people migrated and established new living areas, they carried their ideas with them. And therefore, the idea was spread throughout various parts of the world that this specific group of stars looked like a hibernating bear. As a result, the constellation became known as Ursa Major or Great Bear.
So you're saying that all constellations were named in this way?
Wouldn't that have been difficult to do?
Yes, it would have been difficult, and not all constellations were named in the way the Great Bear was named. Others have been named because the relationship among the stars, about a third of the constellations have been named this way. For example, many constellations were invented by the Sumerians, ancient peoples who lived in what is modern-day Iraq. The Sumerians were systematic when they watched the stars. They divided the sky into some of the patterns that we recognize today. They charted the paths of the sun and planets among the stars and recorded their findings on clay tablets in cuneiform writing. Writing which you have learned about in your world history classes. Now, why do you think I mentioned the ancient Sumerians?
Why is that?
Well, probably because they were recording information which was used by later peoples and...
It also probably started the list of constellation names so others could add to it later.
Well, you are both right. And as a result, today we have more than 80 named constellations which can be identified by patterns and by location within the sky.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
Number 24. What is the discussion mainly about? Number 25. How does the professor emphasize his point about how constellations have been named? Number 26. What are two key features of star charts? Click on two answers. Number 27. According to the discussion, what are some reasons for not knowing the history of all constellations? Click on three answers.
Listen again to part of the discussion, then answer the question.
Star charts will show constellations, and depending upon the time the chart was made, constellations will be shown differently.
Number 28. What does the professor mean when he says this?
Constellations will be shown differently.
Listen again to part of the discussion, then answer the question.
Well, I don't think that was a particularly good reason for the way constellations were drawn.
Sure it is. If we do things today, they will be analyzed differently in 20 years.
Number 29. What can be inferred about the students?
Listen to part of a conversation at a job interview. Job interview. Hi, Beth. You applied for a position in food services?
Yes, I need some extra money.
That's fine. Most students do.
Well, I need to spend some time working, but I am hoping you have some part-time work that I won't have to commit to for all school year.
Yes, there are different types of work in food service, but why don't you want to work for the whole school year?
Well, I might, but my grades are important and I don't want to work too many extra hours and not be able to keep my grades up.
Of course. Why don't I find out some information from you and then I can talk to you about possible openings?
Sure, that's fine.
Have you ever worked in food services before? A restaurant or food kiosk?
Well, yeah. I guess you would call what I did working in food services. I worked selling soft drinks and sandwiches during a festival in my hometown last summer.
Sure, that is part of food services and may even be similar to something you could do here at the university. Do you have time to work on weekends?
Yes, but I would only like to work one day of the weekend.
Well, you know that fall is football time on our campus. The games bring thousands of people to our campus and to the stadium. We have concession stands inside the stadium, and this type of work might be something you would be interested in.
Yeah, that might just be what I'm looking for.
If you were to work concessions, you would need to be at the stadium about 3 hours before a game. Even though the crowds don't start coming until about an hour before the game, you would need to set up the inventory and get ready to sell. You would probably need to start making popcorn and get the hot dogs into the cooker. Also start the cheese melting for the nachos and ice down the bottled water. Then you would need to stay at the concession stand during the game and probably for about an hour after the game to make final sales and to clean up.
So, what you are saying is that I would be working one day each weekend during the football season and that I would be working about 7 or 8 hours each game?
Yes, and you would only be working with food. Another person in the booth would handle all the payments and money. You do need a cheerful disposition because you will be working around people. You always need to be friendly and helpful.
Well, I like people, and I like to keep busy on the weekends. I would lose a day of studying, though. But then I would still have part of the morning to study, or the evening if the games were in the afternoon, or I could just better use my time on Sunday. The hours would be about the right number, but if I could limit my work time to one afternoon or evening a week, I would like to think about working throughout the year. If I like the job, would I be able to continue in the winter during basketball games and during spring sporting events?
Of course, if you are a good employee and want to continue to work campus events throughout the year, there would be opportunities to do so. If you are interested, then you could start this Saturday at the first game of the season.
I think I would like to try it.
Great. I will give you these tax and health forms which need to be filled out. I will tentatively put you on the work list for Saturday. You will need to get all the paperwork back to me by tomorrow, though. Thanks for stopping by, Beth. I am glad we could find some work for you. I think you will enjoy it, and it will give you a little extra cash.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer.
Number 30. What does the student need from the food services manager? Number 31. What does the manager imply about food services? Number 32. What is an example the manager gives the student of the kind of work which might be available? Number 33. How long will the student work during football season?
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
And you would only be working with food. Another person in the booth would handle all the payments and money. You do need a cheerful disposition because you will be working around people.
Number 34. What does the manager mean when he says this?
And you would only be working with food.